They told us that progress solved hunger, that refrigeration ended uncertainty, that glass doors humming in kitchens replaced cellars and root pits and smoke-dark rafters. They said modern preservation made food safer, cleaner, more reliable. And perhaps it did. But long before electric coils and freezer compartments, there was a vegetable that did not require any of it. It could be pulled from the soil in autumn, stored in darkness, and eaten 2 winters later. Not canned, not salted, not dried into brittle fragments. Simply kept. It waited in silence while empires shifted overhead. It did not rot easily. It did not beg for attention. It did not demand constant tending. It survived because it understood patience. And patience is difficult to monetize. This was a vegetable too self-sufficient for the era that followed 1950, too independent of refrigeration, too compatible with poverty, too quiet. And what cannot be packaged, branded, or made dependent often fades from view. A place where forgotten systems are not romanticized, but remembered. Here, we keep the knowledge that once lived in hands instead of instruction manuals. If you believe preservation is more than a marketing term, you may remain here and follow these archives as they open. Tonight, we lift the lid on something that once slept beneath the floors of houses. Something that could rest in sand for years. Something pulled from earth, not shelves. We are speaking of the humble turnip. More precisely, the long-storing winter turnips and rutabagas that once anchored survival across Europe, Russia, and parts of North America. Before 1950, they were everywhere. After 1950, they began to disappear from memory. Not because they failed, because the world changed around them. In the cold northern reaches of Europe, where summers are brief and soil thin, the turnip was not an afterthought. It was strategy. In the valleys of Norway and the highlands of Scotland, families planted them in late spring. By autumn, swollen roots pushed against stony soil, pale shoulders exposed to frost. They were lifted carefully before the ground hardened, not eaten immediately, stored. In Russia, particularly across the plains of Russia, a similar root called repa held an older place in memory than the potato. Before the arrival of New World crops, before widespread grain trade, villages relied on turnips to bridge the long winters. There is an old Russian folktale called the gigantic turnip. An entire family, then neighbors, then animals, must pull together to extract an enormous root from the ground. It reads like a children's story, but beneath it lies agricultural reality. Turnips grow large, unexpectedly large. They anchor deeply. They require cooperation. Oral traditions do not preserve trivial foods. They preserve necessities. In parts of Germany, rutabagas, known as Stepprüben, were planted in thick rows across small holdings. The leaves were fed to livestock, the roots buried in sand-lined pits called erdmitten. Layer upon layer, insulated by straw and soil. These pits maintained a cold, stable temperature throughout winter. Even in years of scarcity, families knew that beneath the frozen surface lay stored nourishment. The vegetable itself was unremarkable in appearance, round or oblong, white fading to purple at the crown, or yellow-fleshed, dense, and slightly sweet. Its skin thickened as days shortened. Frost improved its flavor, converting starches to sugars. It was not glamorous. It did not decorate royal tables, but it endured. Biologically, the turnip is an efficient architect of storage. It is a biennial plant designed by evolution to survive harsh cycles. In its first year, it concentrates energy into the root. Sugars produced by broad leaves under summer sun are transported downward and stored as carbohydrates. The root swells, becomes dense, becomes durable. Its outer skin forms a natural barrier against moisture loss. Its internal tissues remain firm even at near freezing temperatures. The plant is not attempting to feed humans. It is preparing for its own second year. If left in the ground, it would survive winter and send up flowers in spring. That survival mechanism became humanity's advantage. Unlike leafy vegetables that wilt within days or fruits that bruise and ferment, turnips were built to wait. Properly stored in cool darkness with moderate humidity, they can last for months. In certain conditions, buried in sand, protected from light, they have been documented to remain edible for over a year. No glass jars, no electricity, just soil and shadow. The same design appears in rutabagas, a hybrid between turnip and cabbage, even more robust. Their flesh is thicker, their skin tougher. They resist mold, they resist dehydration. They do not collapse under neglect. For subsistence farmers, this mattered more than flavor. Resilience was the currency. The historical record notices turnips most clearly during collapse. In the late 18th century, European agricultural reformers began promoting turnips as rotational crops. Turnips fed livestock through winter, which in turn fertilized fields. A quiet revolution in agricultural productivity unfolded beneath the surface of these swollen roots.